So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd invite you to come in and take your seats so we can get started with the session. The session that we have today is called ICT Professionalism and Jobs in Europe, and we have a subtitle that is Synchronizing ICT Competence Frameworks and Certification Frameworks in Europe. Now, this is a very long title. Essentially, what we will be talking about today with two main objectives. One is to highlight the need and the importance of ICT professionalism in Europe today, and the second will be to underline the value of initiatives that contribute to professionalism and the four main pillars that we'll hear about. So two things that I hope you will get and you will take away from the session today are as follows. The first is really a deeper understanding of ICT professionalism, of what it is, why it matters, and why we need it in Europe today. If you look around at some of the career options that youth are provided with or steered towards when they're thinking about professional pathways in schools today, oftentimes they're guided towards the doctors, they're guided towards being lawyers or accountants, what we would consider to be some of the older, more established professions. On the other hand, when we think of those working in IT, we think of it in much less formal terms. We think of the IT guy, or we think of the techies. For those of you who watch TV online, you might be familiar with a comedy series called The IT Crowd. This is an English-based comedy series where you have a bunch of really bright, really smart, but what you might consider to be socially challenged individuals. Predominantly male stereotypes, and they live in the basement of a company where they drink lots of soda and they drink lots of coffee. And they basically talk a language that the rest of the company struggles to understand. They rarely emerge from their basement apartment to face the light of day and even to interact with the rest of the company. And this, unfortunately, this is how IT is thought of. It's by parents, by teachers, and even by students who are making decisions about their career. So we have a massive image issue. We have a perception issue around IT. And campaigns such as this eSkills for Jobs campaign, the reason that we're all here today, are extremely important in addressing this, and they're badly needed to combat it. But the solution to the challenges that we face needs to be broader than awareness raising. The solution needs to mature not only the perceptions of IT, but also the reality of IT, so that it is and becomes a viable and dynamic career option and professional choice. ICT, of course, should feed business value across the company. IT professionals should and can talk the same language as everybody else in the rest of the company. And the solution that we need should facilitate, of course, mobility within Europe, but also potentially beyond the borders of Europe. So we need a solution that also ensures we have enough graduates and graduates with the right IT skills to meet market demand. We know that IT provides a great deal of crisis-resistant employment, both in the IT sector and all sectors which are becoming ICT-enabled. So the solution is to ensure that we have the talent, the professionals, to feed the industries in Europe. And the solution for this is ICT professionalism, and this is what we will hear about today. From our panelists, we'll look at the different elements of professionalism, we'll hear about a professionalism framework, and we'll look at its different components and why it matters. So this is the first thing that I hope you'll take from the session. What is professionalism and why it matters? The second takeaway is around examples and inspiration. We'd like to provide you with some really practical, real-world solutions that are already existing in Europe today and that support this concept of professionalism. So we have a framework on ICT professionalism, but for this framework, for the ECF, for the body of knowledge, for any of the pillars that support ICT professionalism, what is really key is that they have an impact. They move from being theoretical to being practical, real-world solutions that are used and used at scale in Europe. So this is what I hope you will take away from the second component, some good examples, and we have some great ones on the panel today. So the structure of the panel that we will use today is basically in two sections. So we'll hear from our first three speakers. Each will do a short presentation And then at the end, once we've heard the first three, we'll have an interactive Q&A where I really encourage you to raise your hand and to ask questions as much as possible. This is not an us talking at you. I hope it to be very much an interactive discussion. We not only have all of you here in the room, we also have this session being streamed. I would encourage you to use the eSkills hashtag and the eSkills for Jobs Twitter handle as well. We'll be checking these during the day. We'll then have the three final speakers doing their presentations, and then we'll have a longer session at the end, again for questions and answers. So you will have many, many opportunities to ask questions of our panelists. So without further ado, then I will introduce our first speaker, who I think is already known to everybody in the room and barely needs an introduction. But I'm pleased to introduce Andre Richier, and Andre, I'll ask you to come and join me. So Andre is a principal administrator at the European Commission DG Grow, formerly DG Enterprise. He's responsible for policy issues relating to IT, competitiveness, innovation, the digital economy, and in particular e-leadership, and of course the EU skills strategy, which is responsible for both the ICT professionalism agenda and the eSkills for Jobs campaign as well. Andre, as most of you know, has a very impressive career progression from industry, originally at IBM, through many different DGs within the European Commission, education and culture, research, as well as, of course, DG Enterprise, now DG Grow. So, Andre, thank you very much, and please have the floor.
Yes. Thank you. I think I will stay standard, and I hope that the microphone can catch my voice. Okay. So, excellent introduction, Fiona. Thank you very much. Yes, there is something which is a single common feature in my career is that I've always been working in ICT. I started working in the ICT industry, and when I moved, it was initially in research. Then I moved in education on the topic of e-learning. I was also very much involved in the European SchoolNet Genesis. And when I moved to DG Enterprise in Industry, what is now DG Growth, that was directly to take care of maturing the ICT profession and working on, thank you very much, working on this topic now for almost 10 years. So we have always positioned the ICT professionalism and e-skills activity in the context of growth, competitiveness, and jobs. And one of the challenges, of course, that we have to face is that compared to law, compared to architecture, compared to medicine, the ICT sector and the ICT profession is not very mature at this stage. So we still have to make efforts to mature it, which means that the perception that was Fiona was talking about, the image, the lack of understanding of young people about the education, the career, the job opportunities, is due to the fact that this profession is still very much immature. So all the effort that we are making and using, of course, this campaign is to promote the capacity for Europe to mature the ICT profession. And what is sometimes disturbing, and we have seen this also in the context of the recent banking crisis, is that if you are leaving things, I would not say unregulated, but if you are leaving things purely to forces, you see the consequence. So usually a profession is maturing where you see a big crisis, a big risk, a big danger. So there is an interesting quote from Vinton Cerf, one of the founders of the internet, is that it is difficult to believe the software profession will escape some kind of deep accountability in the future. Because as software, as technologies become pervasive in our life, remember the statement which had been made by the colleague from Microsoft and Cisco just a few minutes ago, the consequence of bad software will be tremendous, not only for the companies, but for the society at large. So it's an effort that we need to undertake to mature the ICT profession, to address possible risk, possible threat, in addition to providing much clearer picture to young people about the education, the job, and the careers which are in offer. And the consequence of this lack, again, of maturity means that when we had reached 2004, 2005, we had reached a peak in the number of graduates. And the reason here is quite clear, is that by 2000, 2001, you had here this crisis of the dot-com, which means that immediately after that, you had a severe decline in the number of young people entering computer science studies at large, especially in the UK. In 1 year, it was 30% drop, and it continued to decline. So you can see that it takes time, of course, for people to graduate, but we saw the consequence 2 or 3 years after that. So the situation now you see is kind of plateau, and we hope that we are recovering. And in some countries there is already a recovery, and some countries did relatively well. Poland and Germany did relatively well. But overall, I mean, the consequences were quite dramatic in terms of enrollment and in terms of graduates. And if you don't have a sufficient growing talent pool of young people, you will have great difficulties, of course, to create the new application and to transform your economy with new technology. As I said, one of the countries which was more severely hit by this phenomenon was the UK, because the UK already was graduating a large proportion of European graduates. Germany managed to continue growing. Poland did relatively well, but the most severe decline was in the UK indeed. Okay, so what the Commission has done to try to remedy to this situation. So we came, after we noticed this, with this policy communication, with a long-term agenda to promote e-skills and ICT professionalism in 2007. We have kept regularly monitoring development of the supply and demand. Werner Korte from Empirica will tell you a little bit about the latest developments. We have also been benchmarking member states' progress on effort in these fields. And disturbingly, what we can see is that sometimes when you have new elections, the new government is dismantling what the previous one had done on this field, and of course it has a lot of consequence. We have also provided recently detailed country analysis. This has been released last year, 2014, so it's quite fresh. And we have been, of course, developing what we call a European framework for ICT professionalism with different building blocks and different already result and initiative. So I want to mention, for example, the European Competence Framework, the version 3.0, which is now available and will become a European-wide standard with the European Standardization Committee. We have been working on European Foundational ICT Body of Knowledge, and today Niels van der Linden from Capgemini will present you briefly, introduced to this concept, but the report, the detailed report, and the first proposal for a pan-European foundational ICT body of knowledge will be released very soon. We have also been working on curriculum development guidelines, both in the ICT field but also in e-leadership, and we will further present this recommendation. In 2014, we also presented quality label for ICT industry training and certification. Werner Korte will present you concrete example about this. And in the future I mean after this summer, so still this year, we will work on a professional code of ethics, and our idea is to bring all these elements together to make a proposal by 2016 of a comprehensive pan-European framework for ICT professionalism. This has been, of course, been complemented by initiative on e-leadership skills, on key enabling technology, the technology that Michel Catina was talking about, photonics and nano and microelectronics, advanced material, etc. And digital entrepreneurship, the report that John Higgins was talking about, and the session, parallel session, which is happening. With a view to boost the countries which were to some extent lagging behind, we came forward with this idea of a grand coalition, so to give a sense of urgency and to raise also the effort from the countryside and also from the stakeholder with a view to ask them to take pledges. And we are committed to continue this campaign at least for the next 2 years. And of course, we will reassess the situation in the course of the result and progress that are being made. Basically, as I said, the ICT profession, if you look from, I would say, a bird view, an eagle view, is 4 building blocks. You can call them pillar or building block. Bodies of knowledge, education and training, competence, professional ethics. This is the simplest possible view. Now, if you look about the different elements and what is contributing to the implementation of this long-term strategy, is that all these things are related to each other. ICT job profiles are obviously relating to the e-competence framework. Industry-based training and certification mapping is also related to the e-competence framework. Curriculum development is also related to the curriculum e-competence framework. So all these elements are coming together. And one of the critical issues, of course, is to ensure that the different stakeholders are moving at the same pace and are contributing and supporting these developments. So here you can see that we have highlighted the key users, the key beneficiaries of this pan-European framework, and the different components which are in blue, and the different elements which are supporting and creating, of course, the fruitful condition, the framework condition to make this happen. So I would say that this is a puzzle. We have already a different element of the puzzle. The goal is by 2016 to come forward with a complete picture, the complete element, to make sure that we have strong support and endorsement from member states, industry, and stakeholders to make this happen. And on top of that, I can tell you that we are in touch with major third countries, the United States, Japan, Australia, Canada, who are relating to us because the problem is the same there. Doesn't mean that, of course, we want to take their solution, doesn't mean that we want to create a fortress Europe. No, what we want is to make sure that we are mutually compatible and that we understand, of course, the challenge and the best practice wherever they have been developed to influence the development of this pan-European framework for ICT professionalism. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andre. We will be able to make the presentations available on the conference website after today. So for those of you who weren't able to see the detail of the professionalism framework, you'll be able to follow up afterwards. So as you were speaking, Andre, I was just following the conference hashtag on Twitter, and you'll be pleased to know that you've been referred to as the godfather of e-skills on our Twitter feed. We'll move now to the next speaker, and I'm very pleased to present Werner Korte from Empirica. So Werner is one of the directors at Empirica, and he's responsible for managing many of the large-scale international research projects and consultancy projects in relation to ICT and e-skills. Empirica, as you may know, works with a number of different DGs within the European Commission. Werner himself has been with Empirica for over a decade and coordinating many of the studies and service contracts. Maybe Werner's fame most recently stems from the figure that we've all heard about, the 900,000 potential unfilled vacancies in Europe between up to 2020. This is very much the work of Werner and his team. So Werner, thank you for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Fiona, for these nice words. I'm with Empirica for more than 3 decades now. I was one of the founding members in 1986. And I'm with Empirica since 1983. This shows my age. I'm working in IT. Since then, I'm not an IT guy, I am a geographer. What qualifies a geographer to talk about this topic? Nothing. A geographer does know everything, but nothing really well. So bear with me for a few minutes now. In talking about something I don't understand at all. The figures we are referring to are not my figures. These are the figures of my colleague Tobias Hüsing. Thanks a lot, Tobias, for this work. Famously known as Mr. 1 million or Mr. 500,000, depending on which figures he provides to the public. I've been told to speak about something with a title you have seen a few minutes ago. It's a weird title. I'm basically talking about figures to show you that there is a shortage, that there is a gap of ICT professions, which you all know does exist. I'll add some figures to that. And I'll speak about something which is called industry-based training and certification, because I think this can help to get this gap closed and the shortage reduced significantly. These are figures, as you can see. This is the ICT workforce today, and since the year 2000, it has increased steadily. And as you can see, after the dot-com bubble crash, slower increase rates than afterwards, but we are still talking about significant increase rates. And you tell me an occupation in existing where the increase rates are that that high as in the ICT profession. This is what Fiona said. This is a job career which probably guarantees a job if you've got the right skills and not, as somebody said today, have learned the wrong programming language like I did, for example. I had to learn Fortran 4, similar to COBOL. I don't know who knows Fortran 4. Hey, this shows your age. So we are the same age, I'm pretty sure about that. So this is nothing you can show off today, but in those days it was good fun or not. I didn't like it that much, I must admit. Anyway, I'm a geographer and not an IT guy. We are talking about the gap, but we have to bear in mind that there are structural differences. Not all IT professionals are here to get a job in the future. We have used a broad definition, so this is the broad definition of an ICT workforce, of the ICT workforce. We have used a core definition, so that's a subset of what we're talking about. And when you look at it, bear in mind the colors. The red one is the highly qualified management, architecture and analyst level. The light blue one is what we call IT core practitioners, and the others are technicians and so on and so forth. If you look at these figures right now, this shows the development from 2011 to 2013, so 2 years development only. And what you can see is that the share of the red group increased by almost 30%. So this is, if you want to make a career in this particular area, go for the red ones. If you don't want to make a career and maybe threatened by unemployment, go for the purple ones or go for the yellow ones, because these are the ones which are slowly decreasing. And there is an association with education level and type of IT to come up with. Whoops, come on, what's the next one? I don't know how this works. You may have to help me. This is a colorful map, yes, and it will become even more colorful. You will be shocked. This is a presentation, taken from a presentation of my dear colleague Tobias, I mentioned before. I can't do this type of thing. As I said, I'm not the qualified person for this. There are countries in there which are dark blue, and there's countries which are lighter blue. And what you will see here is Latvia. I don't know how to operate this. I'm looking at that and should look at this. Latvia here, very close to Germany, very close to Austria, very close to France, even ahead of France, for example. Something very unusual. Normally, when it comes to IT stuff, you would expect Latvia to be somewhere at the bottom. Yeah, this is an index, and the index shows the prevalence of top ICT jobs. And if I continue with my presentation here right now, that's all funny things which Tobias has done. I don't know why this disappeared. Then you see all these funny colors here. And this shows red, as I said before, the future-oriented types of jobs, or the blue ones, the future-oriented type of jobs, and the others less future-oriented. And if you look at Latvia, for example, you see, where is Latvia? Down there. A good portion of red and blue, which shows the workforce here is well educated. There is a good, the good mix of skills, which can ensure that Latvia will stay at the forefront of developments in Europe. It also shows that this circle is quite big. If you look at other countries like Greece, for example, or Portugal, the circle is quite small. This indicates the share of ICT people in the workforce. So you've got a very reasonable, very good share of ICT people already in the workforce. You get only beaten by the Nordic countries, for example, and Luxembourg. Look at Germany, quite small. That's the country I come from, so I can blame Germany for not performing as well. And this shows that Germany is not in the group of frontrunners here. Germany is down there, next to Latvia, so we are neighbors, so to say. Oops, come on, continue. How is this continuing in the future? What we have mapped here, to cut a long story short, is our estimate of how the workforce is going to develop, the ICT workforce. It's going to increase, and the total jobs will be almost 8 million in 2020, according to our forecasts. We have used the demand model from IDC here. And the potential demand, based on the services, the IT services, which industry is demanding in the future, again, IDC figures, we are expecting that there could be a potential for 8.8 million ICT workers in the future. This is not going to happen. It could happen if we would have the people with the right skills. So all of you interested in going into this area, you could become part of these 800,000 here who are missing. We need, or we could fill jobs, 800,000 jobs in Europe, if we would have the people with the right skills in the future. How do we close this gap? That's the potential. The other one is what will become reality. How do we close this gap? I mentioned earlier on, sure, I don't know, this is the situation. Industry-based training and certification could help to fill this job. Industry-based training and certification are these courses you all know from Cisco, Microsoft, Oracle, SAP, to become, was it Cisco network administrator or Microsoft software engineer and so on and so forth. These could help to close these gaps if people would use these type of services, these type of certificates and trainings to speed up their skills to what is needed in the market. The problem is, right now we have thousands of these certificates in the market, and it's a jungle. So you do not really know which one is of good quality, less good quality, and which one to avoid, because it's nonsense. Yeah? Therefore, the European Commission has started an initiative which was aimed at man and technology. Huh? This is funny. No, it's not this one. It's this one. Has started an initiative to make to get the transparency into the market of these certifications, to distinguish between the good, the bad, and the ugly. And how can you do this? You can do this by labeling these, giving them a quality label. And how do you give a quality label to a certificate you think is good? You set certain criteria. And one of these criteria set was the mapping of the certificate of the training course to the ECF. God name, what's ECF? The ECF is the European Competence Framework André was speaking about. This defines competences and skills of specific professions at a rather granular level. And if you want to go for a training or to obtain a certificate, you should know what type of competences and skills this training course is delivering. Today, you don't know anything. You see the funny title, you see the nice brochure, it's promising everything, but what it's actually is delivering is unknown to you. Therefore, this type of quality label demands from these certificates to map their programs and courses to the competences of the competence framework. And all of a sudden you see, if you attend this course and run through it successfully, which type of competences you are going to get. First time in life, transparency of all these different certificates in the market. And if you want to see more about that, you may want to visit this website down there that introduces you to the whole concept of quality labeling. There you also get a brochure. This is the copy of, my goodness, this is the copy of the brochure, which you can download from that website, which introduces to the nitty-gritties of all this. It's not the time here to speak about all this in detail. We have developed this further to a service, and the service I'll come to on my next and last slide needs somebody to push it, somebody to own it, and therefore we have had long discussions with associations, European associations in the market, to declare ownership of this type of service, to run it in the market, so to have a governance model, so to say, and a management organization that is the service provision level. Who is going to award the quality label? Who is doing the mapping or supporting the certifiers in doing the mapping exercise? What we have achieved is commitment from EuroCIO, CIONet. These are CIO associations at European level to run this. We have also received commitment from Digital Europe to run this, and PIN SME covering the small and medium-sized companies. We have a commitment, and they have confirmed that they are going to deliver the services I mentioned earlier on, the mapping exercise, the awarding of the quality label by APMG International and EXIN. These are globally operating certification and accreditation institutions, and they are here to make this happen, to get this service into the market. The service is offered on this website, e-competence-quality.com. It is a service offered to the certifiers, the Ciscos, the Microsofts, the Oracles, the SAP, for example, to get their certificates mapped, to get their certificates the quality label, and then to get into a database. Why into a database? Because this service also offers a self-assessment tool, and the self-assessment tool allows you as an IT profession, as a student, or whatever you are, to map your competences and educational background. You have to fill in certain fields in the self-assessment tool. It takes you 10 minutes, I can assure you. You have to bear with it for 10 minutes, otherwise you can't run through it. And in the very end, it tells you, you are 10% of a systems analyst, you are 20% of a web designer, you are, I don't know what, yeah? And if you then click on a job profile, there are 27 job profiles, André referred to them. If you click on the job profiles, for example, I want to become a business analyst, I want to become a CIO or whatever, it draws a tube map, like the London tube map. The system then shows you the way from where you are right now to what you want to be, and the courses to take, the programs to take, whether it's the Cisco path, the Microsoft path, an SAP path, or whatever it is. So it really shows you the way to what you want to become. So this exercise is open, very, very, very open. We have Klaus Behrla will speak next. He is from LPI, from Linux Professional Institute. They have been the first to run through these processes. So their courses are part of the database. They have been given the quality label. We are now asking the Ciscos, the SAPs, the Microsofts, the CompTIAs, and all these organizations in the world to join the gang, to become part of the club, to get their programs mapped onto the ECF and trying to get this quality label. So then the database will grow from the currently 50 to hundreds, maybe several thousands of programs. So the choice is much bigger. And then you as students, or you as an employer looking for the right type of skills, or you as an employment agency trying to map demand and supply, you use this tool to find the path to success, to find the path to what you want to become through certificates which can help you to achieve that goal. So just have a look at this website, and these are the contact points. Exen, as I said, is one of the organizations to run the service, CIO, Euro-CIO as a governance board member, and yeah, forget about my name. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Werner. I invite you to take a seat on the panel. And thank you for almost sticking to time. Very close. You only went about 2 minutes over. I've already got a couple of questions for you that we'll get to in the next session. Before that, I'd like to invite our next speaker to take the floor. This is Uldis Zandbergs. So Uldis is a lead researcher in competence framework development. And this is through a project that is supported by the EORDF. And he's also a doctoral student at the Faculty of Information Technology Studies at the Latvian University. So Uldis also holds an MBA and has worked as a consultant in IT companies and been supporting IT projects for many years. So Uldis, I invite you to take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. And hello. So, a geographer, right? Okay. I've been working for 2 decades for IT companies, but I have always been a guy that is a liaison officer, sorts of, talking to business people and to IT people, linking them together. And my presentation is actually related to what we have done so far. So I'm going to talk about a competence-based approach to skills assessment and development for ICT professionals. But what I want to stress is that I am actually going to talk about skills that are not that technical. Because to be a successful IT professional today, it is not enough to know all the gadgets. It is not enough to know programming languages. You would be expected to have some communication skills, some management skills. You saw this red sector in the previous presentation where the management skills would apply. So, okay, I'd like to analyze how to use a vendor-created industry-specific ICT standards, certification standards, and to apply them to soft skills assessment and how to use IT tools in order to make life easier for the assessment of the employees. Now, what we have so far, we have these vendor-specific industry standards, we have lists of competencies of skills, we have certification paths, we have certification exams. So these more technical skills, those are actually described. Okay, maybe the different certification paths are not very well linked together. We heard we have an initiative here working on that, but we think that soft skills, for example, all sorts of leadership skills, may benefit from the same approach. But at the same time, human resource experts and these soft skills are their domain. They are cautious, they are reserved in using the approach and using the tools available to them. So this is the general principle in the picture, how we are addressing the issue. So we are using all sorts of certification paths, competence frameworks, and trying to find what links them together. And we have found that if you look into the detailed level, into the skill level, well, the competence is sometimes said to contain several skills. If you have all of them, you may be somewhat sure that you have the competence. But in this case, we are trying to find these building blocks, and by finding these building blocks, we have actually figured out that some of those blocks, if not most of them, could be found in all sorts of certification paths, all sorts of standards. And this was the basis for the approach. We tried to take soft skills, for example, communication, and try to create these building blocks for these skills. As a result, we received a sort of competence-based approach where competences are split into skills. And these skills then could be measured by using some technical tools. In this case, we used scenario-based competence assessment tests that are done by using a computer, software that takes away part of the job that is usually done by a person, by a human resource expert. And in this case, what's most important is the, let me now try, okay. It's the information for decision making. If you are working at a company, then you might possess certain competencies, certain skills, may those be technical skills or more soft skills. And in this case, your manager might want to know what sort of skills do you have, at what sort of level. This information they would receive would be further used to reach company goals, both tactical and strategical. At the moment, there is information that is missing about what are actually the skill levels, the competence levels of our employees. And This approach we used, we have actually used in a recent study. I'll show you in the next slide. This approach allows us to receive lots of detailed information, which is later on used for decision making by the managers of the company. And there is the approach in action. In a recent study that has been done as part of IT Competence Center project that has been supported by European Regional Development Fund, we have prepared several tests for soft skills and offered them to employees of government institutions. So if you would not use this approach, you would usually have some general idea of competence of the employee. That would be this 55%. For example, this is our average Joe, and his competence level doesn't matter at this moment what sort of competence that is, but his competence level is at 55%. Now, consider this same person is not really doing his job that well. The manager figured out there's something wrong with him. In this case, what would usually follow is we would try to educate, to train that person frantically, and usually you would say, okay, if this is the only information that we know, that we would probably train them in all of the things that are available for this competence. But by using these scenario-based tests for separate skills, for separate skills groups, we found out that, for example, this particular person had two skills that are at an uncomfortably low level. The other two are just fine. So because we have these results, we could easily change the training program for this employee and say, we only teach these two skills. As a result, you will receive savings in time, savings in the budget on the training of the employees, just by knowing what sort of skills you need to address, what sort of skills you need to train. So the benefits from this approach is you have a standardized, you have a comparable system for comparing employee skill levels. You have up-to-date on-the-spot information, because currently methods that are used for skill evaluation in soft skills area are usually taking lots of time, lots of preparation time, or lots of time spent on the actual procedure. Then you'd have increased objectivity of assessment results. This soft skill part being human resource expert domain, the result is often very subjective, tied to a person that is doing the assessment. Then, because of the detailed results, we could have targeted development for the employees, and we have some savings on employee development and assessment and the reusability of the same tool for different occasions. So, to sum this up, while ICT vendors, the industry specific standards, they have already worked on skill lists, on competences, on tools for the assessment. The same approach could be used for soft skills, but at this point we need some coordinated efforts that could be used to integrate these soft skill parts with more technical ICT skills, and we could improve the quality, standardize the leadership skill assessment, and also develop methodology for targeted training solutions. So basically this is saying that in order for us all not to become these IT crowd type of guys, we need to add another component, and that's soft skills that are related to our technical skills and that we are going to use for our careers. Okay, thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much, Uldis. I'd invite you to take your seat on the panel. And at this point, I will open the floor to questions from the audience. So if you have a question, please just raise your hand and I'll be happy to give you the floor. In the interim, I have a question, maybe actually two questions for Werner. Addressing the two components of your presentation. So the first was some really interesting stats that you presented around the massive gap that we have in e-skills and closing the gap. And paradoxically, you also mentioned that a lot of the categories of professional profiles that we are needing less and less in Europe, so the purple category that you had pointed to, those are what we might consider to be the entry-level positions. So what steps would you recommend be taken then for somebody who is interested in pursuing an ICT professional career, but who might miss these, let's say, the pipeline, so the entry-level components of their career? So that would be one question. And then second is around the quality label that you had talked about. So what would you say to an organization who might be considering this? What benefits are there? And let's say I'm a certification provider that has hundreds of certifications. What are the main advantages for me to engage with this service?
Okay, let's start with the first question. You are right and wrong with this first point. It is sort of entry-level jobs, but we have to differentiate. What you have seen in red and blue are the occupations which are normally for people leaving universities. So people from universities is what these are aimed at. The ones which were yellow and purple, for example, are the ones for lower level educated people, typically coming from vocational education. So my suggestion here would be to do something Cisco is already doing. Cisco is teaming up with vocational schools, for example, in many countries, in trying to beef up their IT competences and skills to move closer to the blue and the red ones. So this is what I would suggest. I would also suggest to think about the curricula in vocational schools, but coming from Germany with very strong vocational schools and a wife who is a vocational school teacher as well, I know that it's next to impossible if you don't think of the next 10, 20 years to change curricula. It takes an awful long time, probably not only in Germany, but we need to start at some stage. So my wonderful wife has given up on that. She has another 4 years to go before she goes on pension. And that's it, she says. I will go on pension 2 years later. So I have 2 years to spare, and maybe I will be the one to push things at vocational schools. But I can team up with people like Carsten Jonsson from Cisco and others who are doing a wonderful job in this respect. First point. Second point, quality label. You were asking the question, I'm a certifier, I'm SAP, for example. SAP is not around here, so it's safe to say. SAP, we have 200 certificates in the market. Why should I map all these certificates to get new customers for your SAP academies? If you get the new customers at the SAP academies, for example, or University Alliance programs, you make sure that you get the right type of people you need as consultants or as IT professionals to sell your products in the market and to implement your products in the market. Why should you only go in there with one certificate? If you go in there, if you think this is the right approach, put in all your 200 certificates and go for it. I mean, I know from LPI, Klaus can speak about that, they did it full force. I know from Cisco, they are very interested in getting into this full force. I'm pretty sure that the others will follow at some stage. But again, it takes time. It takes not only one, but it won't take 10 to 20 years. I'm giving myself another 5 years, which is at an age where I'm still working.
Great. Thank you very much, Werner. Now I'll pass over to the floor. There's a question. If you could state your name and your organization and ask your question.
Hello. I'm Valentin Igoitsev, updating Romania. A long-time partner of this long-standing campaign, which is e-skills for jobs. I have a question, but it's more like a comment and a proposal than a question. Comment to the previous presentations. which is, and I will refer to our national issue. Romania lacks some 15 to 20,000 ICT professionals per year. Graduates each year are in or around 7,000 people. So graduates with ICT profile, university profiles. So we need double, at least double, let's say, people to join the labor force in Romania. There should be, and I'm speaking about Romania, probably this issue may be a common issue for some other countries. The thing is that policymakers, authorities, state authorities, universities, industry, non-governmental organization should stick together in addressing this issue, because for the time being, the Ministry for Information Society in Romania is not in a position to address this issue. I mean, there have been so many changes in the last 4 years or so. I wouldn't mention the name of the ministers, because there is no point. No point at all. When I discussed these issues on Monday at the ministry, inviting them to join us for the conference, on the kickoff conference on March 26, I discussed with some, let's say, second level people in the ministry, because all the other weren't there, but it doesn't matter after all. We just identified some common interest points to address this year, and not only, in order to have a partnership with them, with the industry, with non-governmental organizations like Junior Achievement, and not only, because this gap is addressed at the moment more by the industry, like Cisco, Microsoft, and some other Romanian companies that capitalize on their skills, on their know-how, and do the right thing, meaning teaching the skills and trying to shape out the future labor force. If you would address this a question to the authorities today or on Monday, they wouldn't know how many programs are developed in Romania for this skill, let's say, development. And this is, let's say, something which should be addressed and maybe should be voiced by the Commission, by, let's say, all of us, in order to wake these people up. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I think this is an issue that occurs often at a national level, is how do we ensure that the pipeline of people with the right talent, that closing the gap, remains a political priority. So maybe, Andre, you would like to speak to that?
Yes, I think the remark that you made, and I was in my speech referring also to the fact that sometimes the government after the election is disrupting or reinventing the wheel or restarting from scratch. There was a perception already many years ago, and there was a report which was released by Bruno Lanvin from INSEAD at the World Economic Forum. The title was "Who Cares? Who Dares?" And obviously, those who cares and those who are seeking for jobs and those who are seeking for employees. And obviously, the conclusion is that if they don't help themselves, if they don't provide parallel path for training, they will never get the graduates. So the situation that you describe is generalized, and it's not just Europe. I mean, it's everywhere. So this is why we believe that the contribution of industry-based training and certification will certainly have the shortest midterm impact, because this is a field where flexibility, capacity for industry to come with new solutions, including hybrid ways of delivering courses using the internet and the MOOCs and the like provide the greatest possibilities and expectation to increase the supply in the pipeline of talent. And the reason why we want to integrate this into the global picture and the framework is that still it's important to keep and to have a single, I would say, language or reference to discuss with the people who are involved in formal education and training, because they must also move. They may move a little bit later, but they need to move. So that's why it's so important to keep the opportunity to have not only a widely used reference framework for e-competence with the European e-competence framework, but also very important to have well-established criteria for quality for industry-based training and certification. The pace of adoption, the pace of integration by ministries of education will depend on many factors that nobody can predict, including, as I said, election and change in public opinion. But for the industry, those who cares and those who dare, this is why they should take leadership on this topic.
Okay, thank you very much, Andre. At this point, I'd like to introduce our next speaker. So Klaus Behrla from LPI, I invite you to take the floor. So Klaus is Vice President of Business Development for Europe at LPI, which is a Linux professional institute. He has been with LPI for over a decade as Managing Director and in various categories in the region. Klaus is also part of the chair, actually, of the working group at the German standards body, and he is the German representative to PC 428, which is the CEN, the European Standards Bodies group that's working on the ECF and professionalism. Thank you very much, Klaus.
Thank you very much, Fiona, for the introduction. Thank you for being here. So I want to talk a little bit about what LPI is doing first. So we are providing a global framework for learning. It is vendor independent. That means we work really independent from one specific vendor. It is very broad. It is for enhancing and developing the lifelong professional careers for people in the very broad area of open source and Linux technologies, which is a huge area, as most of you will know. The API certification program is now at nearly 500,000 exams spread worldwide. So it belongs to one of the big programs worldwide that you know as the ones from Cisco or Microsoft or Oracle. So the LPI exam objectives are published broadly, so they are detailed, published. You can find them on the internet, and this is our first contribution, I would say, as any training institution, school is invited to use it, and it is used broadly everywhere. So this is a curriculum that everyone can use to start spreading any kind of training around this, and this is where everyone will start. We are working with a huge bunch of partners. For example, in Central Europe only we have more than 200 partners. The partners are mostly, as you can imagine, are training institutions, are schools, but also companies that are using open source as their business. It's around 50 companies, for example, only in Germany. But there are also industry partners, as, for example, since more than 1 year we are partnering with Cisco with a basic course around Linux essentials. So you can find in the Cisco environment, in the e-learning environment, a course preparing for Linux essentials now. And to build up a new Cisco academy is really easy. So for all of you interested in this, it is a good opportunity to start Linux through a Cisco academy. We are also partnering with CompTIA. Some of you might know CompTIA. It's also a worldwide body of having exams and also training. We are having a partnership in the way that our first level of LPI certification is also available as the labeled CompTIA Linux Plus exam. For sure, we're having regular updates. It's like with software. So we are updating our exams in a similar way, that we have got a rhythm of 2.5-year updates and 5-year bigger updates on our exams. So that's strict and that's clear. For example, for the EPIC 1, we are now getting to the version 4, and that will be updated like 4.5 and then 5. It's the next level. We also have open updates, discussions about these, and that means that we really try to invite as many as possible experts in the area. So we have got a mailing list where every developer who is qualified is invited to come to the group and to give his input to the development. He can also just listen and read. But in this way, we can ensure to get as many as possible contributions to this community. About jobs, I like to tell you that we are monitoring the job development very much, and we are collaborating with job services. And in the areas where we are very strong, for example, that's the Netherlands or Germany, particularly in Europe, I can tell you there are a lot of jobs where our certification is mentioned in the profile of what the people should bring with. And there you can find, beside other qualifications, they should have an LPIC or equivalence experience. So it's somehow parallel to having an academic qualification. For sure, we find the lack of Linux professionals in the market. That means that there are much more jobs out there in the markets that can be taken, as we have got the qualified candidates. So we feel this lack of qualified people, and we have to handle this. That means there are a lot of companies really looking for these qualified people, and it's as Werner mentioned, it's a very good chance for qualified people to get in this area. So there are a lot of jobs unfilled, for sure, and this will getting serious, particularly, for example, in Germany in the next years, or let's say in the next decade. For sure, we see that certification can result in a new job by this, and also very important to see in higher salaries, as it can be a good chance for the next jump in the career. I also want to mention our engagement at the ECF, as Fiona was referring to. So we clearly recognize that the ECF is an important means that can be getting out of the, let's say, get out of the problem of the jungle in the certification market, for sure. And we want to help generally from LPI side to get out of this big jungle we have. By this, we are engaging in this initiative, and me personally, I'm engaged in the way that I'm a part of the board that is working on the standardization now that is taking place. We have engaged the company Exin last year to map our certification program to the ECF. In this way, we want to ensure that we can be found as quick as possible in the group of certification vendors that really take care of this, and we want to take care of this and go ahead with this. So something else we also found out is by bringing in the certification and norming topic, there are also new stakeholders now in Europe that get on board. All the associations in the countries that are in charge of standardization, like for example the Dean in Germany, now somehow gets aware of what's happening, and they want to take care, they want to play a role in this topic. So they get engaged in the e-skills topic, and at the same time they are also a very good spot to go to work with them. And so through this we see a good chance to start a national coalition for digital jobs in Germany. That's it.
Thank you very much, Klaus. I'd like to invite you to take your seat on the panel. Very interesting to hear about your experience in particular around the DIN and your work on ECF. When we come to the questions session, I'd like to maybe probe a little bit more and hear about your experience adopting the ECF as LPI, as well as would you recommend this for other countries. So, but now I'd like to pass to our next speaker. So I'd like to invite Professor Dietmar Kilian to take the floor. Dietmar is head of the Business Process and Enterprise Network Department at the Management Center at Innsbruck, Austria, and he's also chair of the Academy Cube, which is a not-for-profit organization. As with our other speakers, Dietmar has several decades of experience working at a very senior level in a number of companies, and he functions as an advisor to many of these IT companies as well as on the executive board. So thank you very much for joining, Dietmar. I'll give you the floor.
Thank you very much, Fiona. So a great welcome also from my side here to the conference. And if you have questions, additional or later ones, you can also use this chat and I will give you an answer as soon as possible. Okay, so I think all of you know that we have a gap, we have a lot of things to do and on the education part and for the industries, and we have a lot of interesting topics in the future or now on the table. We are in this changing world. And many of you are also in the education part, and so I think you have the same problem than I. At the university, if we are fast, we can change a curriculum in 3 or 5 years. We need time for this. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, I think at the university, we have to create basic knowledge for students. We cannot adapt permanently our education programs or the permanently changing needs from the market. And so we have a gap. Companies need current and every time changing qualifications. And we as the education institutes, we can help our students to create a good basis. But they have a gap. And based on this gap, to have the qualification in all these areas. 3 years ago, companies and organizations aligned with the European Union, with the German government and so on, they have started with the initiative Academy Cube. And Werner, many thanks for your data. So we use also your data here now that we have a gap in the future of 900,000 jobs. Hope so, in Europe, and we can fill it with activities like the Academy Cube and all the initiatives from the European Union. So on the other side, we have a high unemployed rate of young people, especially in the south of Europe. And they have a good knowledge, and I had discussions with people from Spain, from Portugal and so on. They have a good education, but they have done chemics, they have learned mathematics, they have different basics, but we can help them to get additional IT-related knowledge. And at the Academy Cube, we have at the moment more than 12,000 talents, but the important thing is that we had a lot of interesting seminars from the IT environment related to the needs from the market. The talents can join these seminars. They can do the seminars, they can set activities, and we have a lot of companies, they offer also jobs that they can go in connection. So that's the goal of the Academy Cube. On the one hand, to help interested people, they will join this interesting market around digitalization. And so they can find a lot of interesting seminars, and we have seminars from Cisco, we have seminars from SAP, from Microsoft, and so on in there. And additional, we have also this matching activity or the matching functionality in there. So we are also in discussion with the European Union that we find and we fill the gap what the European Union is doing with this qualification program. So we'll integrate also these things. At the moment, students or graduates, they can go in the cube and they can see and can bring in their qualification and they can see the gap to different jobs and also the link to the right seminars. And as Fiona said, the initiative is a non-profit organization. So more than 90% of all the seminars are for free. And students have only to pay for the certification if they will do a certification. For the companies, it's also interesting to join this initiative to bring jobs, to get in connection with interested people in this environment. Yeah, and in this whole initiative, many companies are invited, many universities are invited, institutions are invited, talents and also these content providers, industry partners, and in the end of the last year, we have founded this non-for-profit organization in Germany, and now Cisco, SAP, and other companies are be a part of this to support this initiative, to bring it in the European market, to help the European market to fill this gap of 900,000 jobs in the future with the right skills aligned with all the other initiatives from the European Union. Many thanks.
Great, thank you very much, Dietmar. Okay, at this point I'd like to invite our next and final speaker to take the floor. I'm pleased to introduce Niels van der Linden. Niels is managing consultant for Capgemini. He's done a lot of work around digital transformation in the public sector, and I know from working with him is extremely passionate about supporting public organizations and the changes that can be made. Most recently, Niels has led an extremely important project for the development and maturation of ICT professionalism in Europe. This is a pan-European foundational body of knowledge that was commissioned by DG Enterprise. So this is a key pillar of professionalism in Europe, and we look forward to hearing about it. Thank you, Niels.
Thank you very much, Fiona, for your kind introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. I am indeed passionate about digital transformation. And I actually come across that every day. I have 3 very young kids, and if I see how they use technology and what kind of technologies they actually are using every day, and I compare that to when I was their age, and I'm not that old, it opens up huge opportunities for them. And I mean, just a very practical thing is, I recognize this as a projector, right? We used to display dias on it. If I would ask my daughter, a 5-year-old, she would probably go to the screen and swipe it, right? There it is. This is technology of today. So digital transformation, and Capgemini has done a big research on digital transformation together with MIT University over the last couple of years. And there came many interesting things came out of that. One of them was that 76% of the biggest companies do not invest enough in e-skills. So that clearly opens the opportunity for, well, you can say more and better professionals. We need more than these 2 people to close the gap. We need more and more professionals, and we need to, well, they should know what they are doing. I mean, this is not how I would build a bridge. So we need to be constantly focusing on developing competences, skills, etc. And maturing the profession of ICT is, well, you can compare it, I guess, also to other professions like Fiona also did in her introduction. Having a understanding of a foundational knowledge, body of knowledge, prior to specialization is actually a critical success factor for applying that knowledge in practice. And that's where the framework for ICT professionalism in Europe comes in, and Andre has already told you a lot about it. The foundational ICT body of knowledge, one of the projects that we, together with Ernst & Young, developed over the last year, can help in that regard. It basically defines the base level knowledge to enter the ICT profession, and in that way it also acts as a point of reference for anyone who is interested in maybe starting a career in ICT. So how does that look? Basically, this is the model that we that we came up with after 1 year of many iterations with a broad set of stakeholders. So we ran several surveys, we had workshops, a big conference, a steering committee with support of valuable members like CEPIS, and finally came up with, let's say, 12 knowledge areas that define more or less the broader sense of the ICT profession. So it runs from left to right, from more business orientated to more technical orientated. And each of these knowledge areas is then constructed with a description of foundational knowledge. So what's in there, this is just an example, but it also references the competences in the ECF, the job profiles used there, and it, well, and this is where the guide function comes in, it directs to specialist bodies of knowledge where you can find the specialist knowledge you would require to further develop. So you can see that here, and this is just an example for software design and development. There are many more in this. And the key thing is it's about synergy. It's about creating synergy. So if you want to enter the ICT profession, you probably come from a certain kind of form of education, but you need to have, let's say, the core understanding, not just of the specialism you might enter, but also to be able to work together with all the other disciplines, to understand what they are doing and to explain to them what you are doing, right? So this is about communication and sharing knowledge. So the whole body of knowledge, the foundational body of knowledge is testament to that. So it's about creating synergies, also with the ECF and with the other pillars of the framework. And that also goes for how we foresee further development of the whole framework. I mean, it's not just, if you want to start implementation, you need to be able to build on existing initiatives in countries. There are already many national initiatives, national coalitions. I know, for instance, in the Netherlands, who have implemented the ECF, they're already starting to see if they can integrate the body of knowledge into their daily activities. Similar goes for the international partners around the world, as Andre also mentioned, Japan, United States and Canada. So they're all focused also on collaboration. And I think this is the key to drive the actual value and bring it from a general framework to the actual user, because that will be the key challenge, to actually reach out to the ICT or potential ICT professionals, so we can pick up the challenge and, well, achieve more and better ICT professionals. That, in short, is my story. Thank you very much, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Niels. And we do have time for questions, so if anybody would like to ask one, I'd encourage you to raise your hand at this point and introduce yourself and your organization, please. Thank you.
Matthew Gutt from the eSkills Malta Foundation. I'd like to congratulate Werner and Andre and all the team, because I'm an avid fan of their work on the ECF and the online tool set for quality. I think one of the challenges I'd like to possibly share is there's a lot of work being done vertically, as Andre said, under the DG and in the IT community. But when I've come to push the recognition at a national level, I find it very, very hard with our higher education authorities. And it's something which Andrea has reflected on also. I think there is scope to share possibly practices of recognition at a national level, and then maybe work bottom up to help accelerate that change. I know Ireland have some recognition on certifications, Scotland and the UK, and I refer to those because they're accessible in English, but other examples would be welcome, and maybe we can generate some national network and bottom-up change to help accelerate that education vertical, which is not really talking, I think, to DG enterprise.
Great, thank you very much. I think that's a really practical suggestion. Maybe just to give a brief reaction, and then I'll hand it over to the panel if anybody would like to add anything further. Under the Grand Coalition for Digital Jobs, one of the initiatives that we're undertaking is a body of work around the ECF, and it's exactly what you'd mentioned. It's bridging the gap, so filling in what is maybe not as strongly represented as it could be, and it's the documentation of best practice and the front runners who've already taken up the ECF, and ensuring that there are case studies available that can be used in other jurisdictions to show how the ECF, you know, in a practical sense, how it can be introduced into an organization or in the public sector. So that's something that we are certainly working on and can share with you. I don't know if anybody, Andre, would you?
I think on this topic, and I'm very fortunate that my colleague is here, we have been working with DG Education and Culture, DG Employment, DG Connect for a long time. There is now a very interesting time because we are rethinking skill strategy as a whole, and we are very committed to fill and to fit the e-skills activities into this bigger strategy. And I hope this will help building the bridges and facilitate the synergies, but maybe my colleague Liv can elaborate a little bit on that.
I had in fact asked for a question, but yes, I think under the digital single market at the moment, which is heavily discussed internally between a lot of DGs, at least 5 DGs who worked already for many years together have found the possibility to have a highlight on the e-society and to look into the skills, the e-skills for entrepreneurs, workforce and citizens. And the ideas that we hear today are popping up there, but concrete actions still need to be filled in. So we are looking into what are the actions to be taken. And in fact, in that sense, if I may ask my question also to the panel, I hear a lot under the ECF and the work done that you are connecting an individual, a learner or a job seeker with, in fact, a company. What I didn't hear so much, and I was very happy to hear Academic Cube, is the bridge maker. And of course, we have quite a lot of private and public employment services. What is already the steps taken, or how do you want to bring them on board, or which instruments would you like to see the Commission to take to bring them on board? Because you need those builders, those bridge makers, like Cisco is, because you will not get it out of the ICT graduates. We know that that is steady, that is will not increase immediately, so you have to find them in other sectors, like in vocational education and training. But in practice, those individuals from VET, for example, are not immediately in contact with Cisco and so on. They don't find their way. That is what is the reality. So what are the plans, or what are you offering or asking maybe to offer?
Based on this, I think I can give you an answer. So the Academy Cube is not an initiative only from Germany. So we build at the moment a network of localized organizations. They are invited to do this. So we have organization in Spain, in Portugal, Italy. Now we are starting in UK. So in Spain, the main organization to do it as a non-for-profit organization, also non-for-profit organization, is the Royal Academy of Engineering, and they built this bridge from the companies to the Academy Cube to the universities to professional or interested learners. So in UK we are starting now with another organization to roll it out, all the activities, and bring companies in and also other universities. So in UK we start with the Birmingham City University to roll out the Academy Cube. So I think it's very important, as you said, to work with local companies or local organizations. You have the different culture, you have different networks, and so on. You have to use it to make it faster. Yeah, to connect people, companies, and organizations. But it's very important, as you also said, to integrate international companies like Cisco, Microsoft, like SAP, that they bring in their knowledge, their seminars, and so on. They open the market for interested people, and so that's the connectivity, what we can support and what we are doing aligned with European Union organizations, universities, and so on. So make it faster, make it a wave. Yeah.
Great, thanks very much, Dietmar. I'll pass to Werner, and then in the interest of time, we had 2 further questions from the audience,
yeah, sure.
And then we'll draw to a
try to keep it short. Lieve was raising the very important issue of brokers between demand and supply side. The ECF is a very powerful tool because it allows the demand side industry to specify their requirements in an agreed set of competences and skills. It also allows the supply side, industry-based training certifications, for example, or universities or schools, to specify what they supply in the same language. So the ECF is the common language. All of a sudden, we speak the same language, we do a mapping, and we find out whether there is a matching. If there is a mismatch, we can find the right certificates or the right training and education courses to make sure that this mismatch becomes a match. First point. Key actors, as you mentioned, in the market to get this matching done between the demand side, industry, and the supply side, the education and training sector, are employment agencies, is the staffing industry, for example. If the employment agencies would use the same language in their matching processes, wow, that's it. If staffing industry would do the same thing, wow, we are there. 2 historical examples. We have talked about this with Randstad. Randstad is staffing industry. Everybody knows Randstad, like Adecco or Manpower and whatever. Yeah. And they have immediately spotted this power of the ECF, this competence framework. And they've said, wow. Bundesagentur für Arbeit, yeah, that sounds German, is the German National Employment Agency, immediately spotted the power of this tool. In both cases, we are still working. Progress is being very, very slow. I'm more optimistic with Randstad than with the Bundesagentur für Arbeit, because they have their own systems in place. They do these sort of matching. They have their criteria and their language to match a carpenter with a specific skill set to the industry demand for carpenters. Yeah? And they will not from today to tomorrow change and use a new language, because this would imply having to train 10,000s of people in the market. So that's the challenge. They've identified the power of this common language. They think it's a great thing to do, but that's where we are at present. And if you can help with EURES or whatever, yeah, to get this into the minds of the people, slowly, step by step, I give you 8 years, because this is the year when I intend to go on pension. Yeah. I don't want to spend 10 or 12 years, so please make sure that in 8 years' time, when I'm a pensioner, I can enjoy this.
That's great. Thank you very much, Werner. We'll take two further questions from the audience, and then I'll put it back to the panel. So Marcus, and then to Karsten. So Marcus, please.
Hi, Manos Hanratty. I'm from FIT in Ireland, Dublin, Ireland. I have 1,000 questions, but I have to tone it down to just one. And so the question is to do with the ECF, obviously. I think it's a wonderful idea. It's terribly obvious. I mean, it's a fantastic communication tool. It allows us to speak with a common reference, etc., etc. I've heard several groups or representatives on the panel also endorse ECF. So my question really is simply this: how many countries have signed up for ECF? And if none have signed up, when is the first one, and when is the second one, etc.?
Thank you very much, Marcus. Maybe I might just ask the second question, and then I'll open it to the panel. But I always appreciate the questions that we get from Marcus at these events. They're straight to the point and very direct. So, Karsten, I'll ask you to invite your question.
Thanks. Karsten Jonsson from Cisco. I would maybe give a short recommendation for the IT industry as well, because we have talked a lot about vendor certifications, and when I'm speaking with teachers, it is sometimes that the IT industry is perceived as being a bit arrogant, because these vendor certifications were made for the IT professionals for the labor market, and now there is a vocational training teacher. He says, well, I have time constraints, I have restrictions in resources. How should I teach a course that should last 280 hours? I don't have the capacity. So the recommendation for the IT industry, and this is difficult for these global players, is to become more decent and to allow that maybe some elements and modules of the certification courses can be used in the schools, instead of always beating the teachers to take the full vendor industry certification course, because this is beyond or above the heads of the target group and above what the teacher can do. So therefore, I think we have to evolve our learning material so that it empowers the teachers to take bits and pieces that are matching with the needs of the target group and the learners, and not always to aim at the highest standard of the industry certifications. Because maybe in a later age, the young person who received some training in a vocational education school will go and take the full vendor certification. So this maybe as a recommendation.
Great, thank you very much, Karsten. Would anybody from the panel like to react? Just a comment from myself before we close as well on the comment from Marcus. From our experience within my organization, we have seen uptake in 32 countries across Greater Europe of the ECF. So that might not be the detail that you're looking for, but it is at least an answer. So Klaus, please.
Yeah, to the first question, I want to answer from the stakeholders that are now really active on the board for bringing the ECF to a European norm. We could say the Netherlands are the most active, and there's already a kind of an industry growing, as Niels already mentioned. He's from the Netherlands, he knows it very good. So there is a really big community around ECF in the Netherlands, and I'm very happy that there is one dedicated company to staffing. That's the company named IT Staffing, that fits very good, that is really close to having a clear mapping of all the candidates to the ECF. So they will publish something. They are now in the process of having a first, let's say, a first draft of the software, but they will publish it soon, and there will be more coming like this. And it's very much in the sense of Randstad, who needs such means, and they will develop something like this too, I'm sure. It's just a question of time, not 8 years, but it will take some time for sure. And about the stakeholders that are playing a role, we see now in the board at the Zen from the PC48 that there are more and more countries coming in. So it's the last meeting in Milan. I think there were 8 countries represented in person, and by this you could say there is more and more interest at the country level.
On this remark, I want to make a funny anecdote. Is that the first time we got the ECF translated into French, it did not come from France, it did not come from Belgium, it came from Canada. And among the countries which are not European, which have adopted the ECF as their standard in their standardization body, was in 2013 the Federation of Russia. So I think we need to consider that there are many people outside this room and outside Europe who take care of this topic. So I think we should empower more people who are making things, people who make things happen, than to worry about what's next, when everybody will be ready, then I will decide to move. So this is a very important topic, this notion of professionalism. Some countries in Asia have been as far as developing IT register, which means that, and this was in Malaysia, this has been discarded, but it's been renewed and discussion will come again in the parliament there. That meant that if you would not be on that IT register, you would not be able to work as an ICT practitioner. So I think it's an extreme, and we are not that far. But just to tell you that in various parts of the world, there are many people who are working on this, making progress, and I think the question that we should ask ourselves is not what the others are doing, but what can we do to make things happen, and not in the scope of the 8 years that, because I saw the younger face were not smiling that much, so I think we need to make this happen much quicker.
That's an excellent note to finish on. Please join me in thanking our panels for their presentations and their contributions. Thank you all very much. And we will, I'd like to thank the audience as well. We will no longer stand between you and lunch, but I do invite you to go have lunch in the restaurant and also to visit the exhibition which is downstairs. So thank you very much for joining.